Hey guys, do you know what day it is? It's the last day of school! That means you're done. You're finished. Who did remote learning? You did remote learning. And now this experience is past us. As soon as you take finals next week, you're free. You have a beautiful, wonderful summer to look forward to. And I'm so excited for you guys. And let me just say, I'm so proud of you all too, because I can only think of myself as a teenager and how I would have handled the idea of transitioning onto remote learning and trying to complete all of my classes online. And so for many of you, I just have to give you major praise and accolades and props, because I know that quite a few of you did much better than my teenage self would have done. So air high five for that. Being that it is the last day of school, this also means that it is the last video, which means that it is my time to say goodbye to you all. And as heartbreaking as that is, and as much as I wish we could say goodbye in person, I thought I would just make one last video to really thank you all for the year that it's been. I've been so blessed to be your teacher, and I'm going to miss you all so very much. But before I go, I want to talk a little bit about summer. So summer is my favorite season. Seriously, I was born during it. I love swimming. I love sunshine. I love everything about it. Maybe not the mosquitoes, but I will say this. I'm very willing to pay the penalty of mosquito bites for summer. And I think it's a wonderful time for all of you to relax and rejuvenate and to do some of the things that you don't have the opportunity to do during the school year. But often I find sometimes we become so opposed to the idea of doing schoolwork and just letting our minds rejuvenate that we sometimes throw out some of the activities from school that could actually be used for fun. And one of these activities that could be very fun for you and could be a way of entertaining yourself during the summer season is by... What kind of English teacher would I be if I didn't plug in some reading for the last day of school video? So I know what you're thinking, Ms. B, we've read all year. I know, but you've also read, for the most part, what we've assigned. And what we've assigned, while you should read it, is not always your choice. So my humble proposition is that sometime during this summer, you use this as an opportunity to read the books that maybe you don't get to usually read while you're doing your reading for the school year. Instead, you use it as an opportunity to investigate what books you'd like to read for yourself. And my suggestion is because many studies show that just 20 minutes of reading a day can improve so much of your cognitive function. You're able to retain information better, you are able to think quicker, and you're able to then get higher scores on the SAT exams when you need them for admittance into college. And so as 8th and 9th graders, you could use some of this integral time to not only entertain yourself, but to prepare yourself and possibly get the best SAT score that you can, and therefore get as much scholarship money as you can when you apply to different colleges. And so I'm here today to talk to you about the different ways that reading can be fun and for you. So, I don't know how many of you know this, but a couple of years back, I decided, since I'm going to be an English teacher, and since young adult novels are on the rise, I thought to myself, it's important that I know what's out there for my kids. And so every summer, I take not only classical literature and theological literature, which I'll talk about in a moment, but I take a few young adult novels and I get into them just to kind of see what's out there for my kids. So Roseblood is a novel that I read about 2 summers ago. For any of you Phantom of the Opera fans, it's based on Gaston Leroux's original novel, but it is not the only young adult fiction that is out there. This summer, I'm going to be reading through Carrie Maniscalco's series through James Patterson, because she sets these in the Victorian era, and her protagonists take on different Victorian villains, which I'm very excited to read about. With young adult literature, I will tell you, as a Christian, you have to be very careful. Some of the literature that's out there is not always the best in terms of content. I'm going to attach a link to the post in Google Classroom today, but Plugged In is a very good site for both you and your parents to look through and pick literature, young adult literature, that's going to not only be profitable for you intellectually, but also spiritually edifying, or at least not spiritually destructive. So it's important before you read any of those kinds of novels to also get your parents' insight into them. For you musical theater nerds, and I know I have a few of you, which I appreciate because I'm also a musical theater nerd, many musicals are also based off of books. So that is a fun, creative decision you can make in terms of your own summer reading. I do apologize, I don't have any just because I'm not a sports fan, but for you sports fans, and I know I have some of you out there, many different athletes publish their own biographies. And there's plenty of literature out there, especially like for notable athletes like Jackie Robinson and Michael Jordan. So reading some of those might be very interesting to you as well. And one way in which you can complete your 20 minutes a day and read is by reading resources that would be good for you as a Christian. In addition to your Bible, you can also read through books that other pastors or Christians have written. For any of you who are interested in potential missionary work, plenty of missionaries have either autobiographies or biographies that were written about them and by them. There are also different resources that you can use in learning about how to defend your faith and to practice apologetics. And there are other resources out there that could be helpful and edifying to you in your spiritual walk. This is one that I've read through, Pleasing God by R.C. Sproul and Trusting God by Jerry Bridges. These are important books that help us as Christians to learn to grow in our faith and our walk with God. For some of you ladies and gentlemen out there, there are books published by different Christians geared towards what it means to be a woman of God or a young man of God. And so those might be interesting resources to go through with your parents in discussing what biblical manhood and womanhood looks like to you. You might also do a content study. This is one that I'm reading through now, Learning Contentment by Nancy Wilson. And one that I'm very excited about. This is going through how God establishes law and principles, and it's by this standard by Greg Bahnsen. So one way, if perhaps fiction is not what you enjoy, one way that you could complete these 20 minutes of reading a day is by looking at different biblical literature and looking at texts written by Christians for Christians and helping you become a better Christian. And that might be a much better way to supplement your own personal choice when it comes to reading. Last but not least, there might be a beloved historical figure that you're really interested in and that you want to know more about. This is The Courage and Character of Theodore Roosevelt. I read this 2 summers ago, and for many of you who know, I love Theodore Roosevelt. That man. But maybe you're someone who's interested in Anne Boleyn, or you're interested in Abraham Lincoln, or you're interested in Nelson Mandela, and you would like to learn more about their lives. Reading through a biography is a great way to enjoy your personal reading and to grow in the areas that you want to grow about. Maybe you want to know a little bit more about the Black Plague, and your teacher didn't cover it as much as you would want to. There are books on that. There are books for everything, guys. And so that is my take. And I will, in a moment, address possibly the classics that you might enjoy. But I've made the decision in addressing the classics that you might enjoy to do one last transition for the year. So for the 8th graders watching this is the first time you're seeing one of my character changes. For the 9th graders, you're just like, yes, or hopefully that's your reaction. So let's do this one last time. Hello. So, let's get down to the tea. And literally, I mean, let's address the tea. So, I don't know what kind of English teacher I'd be if I didn't at least give you some recommendations for the classics that you could very well enjoy while you are on your summer vacation. Many times we think of comic books, video games, and movies as being completely isolated from classical literature. However, we actually find that many of those beloved sources of entertainment are actually inspired by literature. And so you might find that there are even some pieces of your childhood that you would be intrigued to know started out as classical pieces of literature. So I'm going to just give you a few options that you might consider while you're reading for your own enjoyment this summer. For those of you who don't know, The Hunchback of Notre Dame by Victor Hugo actually was a book. Many of you are familiar with the Disney musical, with the animated movie, but that actually began as a classical novel. Simultaneously, there are other pieces of heroic fiction that are just as interesting. The Three Musketeers was originally a novel by Alexandre Dumas, the French writer. Perhaps you'd enjoy Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. So Peter Pan began as a play, but the playwright J.M. Barrie developed a novel based on his play that you could perhaps find very enjoyable. For any of you Alice in Wonderland fans, you'll be glad to know that that started out as a classical text that you might be intrigued in learning about. For any of you fans of RPG video games, and for perhaps Tolkien's work with the Lord of the Ring franchise, you might be interested in some of the quest literature that started it all with King Arthur and his knights. One of the wonderful things about Arthurian literature is that there are so many different writers who have written about King Arthur and the fictional kingdom of Camelot and the sword in the stone and Excalibur. Believe it or not, they're different. For some of our Narnia fans who have ever watched the films, there's a whole 7 novels that you could explore and could use to fill your time this year with entertainment. So I say this year, I meant this summer. For any of you who enjoy historical fiction, there are plenty of pieces of classical literature that address different time periods, but in a fictional setting. One of those being The Boy in the Striped Pajamas and The Book Thief. Both exceptional novels, both very intellectually stimulating, but please be warned, they are both very, very sad. And so you wouldn't really want to approach those pieces of literature without also having a tissue box on hand. Oh, that's spawny good tea. Okay, so last sentiment 2, just to reiterate, not only have movies and, different forms of entertainment been affected by literature and classical literature specifically, but a lot of the different modern stories that we have today were very much influenced by classical pieces. I had mentioned to you earlier how there was the young adult novel Roseblood, which is based on the classical French novel The Phantom of the Opera. This is not the only case. For my 9th graders who read A Tale of Two Cities this past quarter, you have the Cassandra Clare series, The Infernal Devices, that were heavily inspired by A Tale of Two Cities, specifically with one of the characters being modelled after Sidney Carton. Unfortunately, Cassandra Clare is one of those writers that I had to warn you about. Not all of her stuff is very PG, and so you have to definitely talk to your parents before reading that. But last but not least, you all know how deeply I love comic books and how much I enjoy a good graphic novel and an illustrated tale. Funny thing about comic books and anime and video games, we wouldn't have them if we didn't have classical literature. We really wouldn't. Batman, my favorite, is actually a testament to one of my favorite time periods, the Victorian period. For example, many different scholars attribute Batman's origins to being created by Victorian inspiration with works of classical literature such as The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and one of my favorite pieces, Dracula. Did you know that Dracula was a classical novel? If you didn't, now you do. And so this is why I'm saying there are many different pieces of classical work out there that you might not anticipate being interesting to you, but are actually beloved stories that you've had all throughout your life. And so my challenge to you this summer, if you're not reading other works of literature or more modern works, is to perhaps investigate a piece of classical literature that you'd also be interested in based on its cultural relevance and how it led to some of your favorite stories being told. So thank you. That is the tea. Thank you for indulging me. And my, what a glorious tea it's been. And so now I will bring you back to your teacher. Obviously I'm your teacher, but your normal dressed teacher, to close out the year with you all. Thank you for having me. That was fun, right? That being said, now that that's over, and I've spoken my piece about how you can spend your summer reading for fun, it's time to say goodbye. So, I have said this a couple of times in videos past. I definitely didn't know March 13th was the last time that we were going to see each other. I kind of wish I knew, just so that I could have given more smiles, more hugs, maybe threw a couple of parties. Gosh, guys, if we were in school right now, there would definitely be a party. 8th graders, I'm sorry. You didn't get a party. 9th graders, you got several. 8th graders, if we see each other next year, trust me, there will be parties. But that being said, it's very difficult and it is sad, and I wish that there were another way that we could say goodbye rather than having to go through this technological medium. But God is sovereign even through this, and even though none of us knew it, He knew it, and so we know it has to be good. And so this is going to be my virtual goodbye to all of you. It has been such a blessing to be your teacher. I have enjoyed seeing every one of your faces and being able to come into the classroom and have the laughs and the interesting conversations that we've had. I'm so thankful for how well behaved you all were this year and how much you welcomed me to GCA and this being my first year. And I pray that this isn't the last time, or that March 13th wasn't the last time that we saw each other. Maybe providentially, if you don't return next year, there will be another opportunity in which God lets us say goodbye. But if it was, thank you again. And I will be praying for you. And hopefully I'll see you next year. If I don't, I'll always be praying for you. And if you ever need anything, seriously, just email and reach out, and I'll be more than happy to help you. Have an incredible summer. You're going to kill finals next week. You're going to kill it. It's going to be awesome, and you've got this. And then you have summer. You get to sleep, relax, and ice cream is one of my favorite things about summer. That and swimming. Okay, bye, everyone. Woohoo!